I'm Timothy Cameron. I'm a employee of 180 Degrees, and I noticed that you've got people speaking to you today straight out of the Bible. We've got John and Timothy and 2 Timothy, 1st and 2nd Timothy. I couldn't say that at a secular organization, so I'm glad I'm here. Sometimes those that deserve love the least need it the most. And the ones that receive that love, they turn around with a great and powerful love because they know they've been loved. We love because we were first loved. My job as a caseworker at 180 Degrees is to help men and women secure employment and sometimes find appropriate housing despite criminal backgrounds. They're all on probation, and we believe people deserve second chances, and we try and affect the means to make that a reality. It's not always easy. I thought it was funny, they referred to me as an insider. You know what an insider is? John, you know what an insider is? Yep, that's us. Past insiders. And we both did time. When I was in prison in Missouri, I did 2 major incarcerations, by the way, and several minor incarcerations. I've served about 13 and a half years in prison total. And, sorry, I've got to have somewhere to set my stuff, and I wasn't prepared. My bad. But, and in my first major incarceration, I was there for manslaughter. I drove under the influence of alcohol and in a stolen car, and I killed this boy by the name of Timothy. I hit his mom, who was crossing the street with a stroller, ran over her legs, ran over the stroller, and an hour and a half later, Timmy died. And this is where he's buried, in Missouri. Now, little Timmy was with his auntie, Susan, at the time, too, but Susan got out of the way of the vehicle and was not hit. That's quite a burden to carry. Now, I pled guilty to the crime of manslaughter because I knew that there is no way in the world that I could make Sherry, Timmy's mom, re-experience losing her son again in a courtroom. I was sentenced to 2 to 10 years in the Missouri State Penitentiary for men at Jefferson City, which at that time they called the bloodiest 47 acres in America. I was 20 years old. I was the youngest person there. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be there. I was terrified of going. But while I was there, God protected me the entirety of my sentence. I didn't do everything right. I formed a small gang when I was there and was maximum trouble to the system as I could possibly imagine to be. And I was not easy to be around. Nobody comes out of prison the way they went in. Some come out worse, some come out better. For me, prison was my monastery. I did begin to believe in God while I was there, but my belief system was pretty damaged. But you got to start somewhere. And one of the role models that I want to tell you about was a guy who was there for a crime associated with heroin. He robbed to get money to pay for his habit. He was in Vietnam, had his legs blown off from the knees down, had artificial legs, and I don't know how much time he was doing, but this guy had a good attitude. No matter what you did, the guy was smiling. He was laughing. He was having a good time. And a bunch of us, every time we saw him, we used to bum rush him and pull off his prosthetics and throw him in the swimming pool. And I know it sounds horrible, but we were friends, so it was fun. And he would punch you because his arms were extremely strong, making up for his legs. And if he'd hit you, you know you've been hit. We'd pull off his legs and throw him in our tiny swimming pool, 4 by 6 feet, 3 feet at the deep end. It's not an Olympic pool, it's prison, right? And just someplace to dip in a hot summer afternoon. Well, one day we ran up to pull his legs off, right? We see him at a distance and we're running up and we say, look, there he is, let's go get him. And he sits down, pulls his own legs off and threw him in the pool. And laughed. And we laughed so hard that we just didn't do it again. We couldn't top that. But one day I did see him sad out of the 6 years that I was there. And his woman quit visiting him. She couldn't do it anymore. And it was a very difficult thing to see in him. And that's why I was glad I didn't have any visitors. In my 4th year of incarceration, I found out that my dad had driven his Harley under the influence of alcohol, crashed. He had been smoking, drinking, and smoking pot, drinking alcohol. His girlfriend at the time was killed, and he's charged with vehicular homicide up here in Minnesota, while his son is languishing in a prison for essentially the same crime, but by a different name, manslaughter. And there's a couple of common denominators between us. One is that we both suffered from untreated alcoholism, and 2, we sold our freedom for a drink. Sold our freedom for a drink, and I sold mine cheap. I wasn't drunk. I drank 3.5 beers that day. But I hadn't eaten in a couple of days, and I hadn't slept much. But I had carried that burden for a long time, and I didn't begin to release that until after my second incarceration for robbing a store. When I was released from prison, I sobered up, went to Alcoholics Anonymous in Stillwater, and that was August 17th that I was released. I drank on the 18th of 90 and sobered up. Out on the 17th, drank on the 18th, sobered up on the 19th. Sunday, told my PO on Monday that I drank. Didn't know I was going back to prison. They decided to let me stay here in the free world, just said, keep doing the deal, keep going to meetings, do what you got to do. It's the first time I'd been honest with them. They didn't want to penalize that. And when I was sober 90 days, a woman by the name of Mary Jo Robinson from Mothers Against Drunk Driving was coming to speak to us, and I couldn't imagine why a MAD member was going to come to AA, and tell us which bad people we were. I was experiencing contempt prior to investigation. I didn't know anything about her, but I assumed I knew what she was going to say. Kind of like what we do with people when we meet them or we hear about them. Oh, he's an ex-convict. We have built-in assumptions about people. And I found out that she was one of us, introduced herself as a person in recovery, sober by the grace of God, 22 years at that time. And she talked about how her son was killed by a drunk driver, but the thing that hit me so hard was what she did in the courtroom at the time of the sentencing. She gave her victim impact statement, and she wanted the young man who killed her son to look her in the eyes. One side of the courtroom, other side of the courtroom, he wouldn't look at her. So she broke a rule, crossed the courtroom, approached him, placed her hand underneath his chin gently, and with his permission said, "Would you please look at me when I tell you this?" And she gently raised up his face, and as soon as their eyes met, she said, "I want you to know something. I want you to know that I love you and I forgive you for killing my son." And what do you think he did? He broke down sobbing. And as soon as he started crying, she stepped forward, she put her arms around him and held him as he cried in her arms uncontrollably, and just kept repeating the words, "I love you, I forgive you, I love you, I forgive you." And as a person that has lived the kind of life I lived, I didn't hear those words with authenticity. But when I heard her say that about the man who killed her son, it hit my heart. And she said, "You know, I'm a Christian." She was a Catholic, and Catholics know something about forgiveness. I'm not Catholic, but every Catholic that I've been in contact with lives forgiveness. Might not do it perfectly, we're all human. But she says, "I'm a Christian, I'm in AA, both teach forgiveness." And now that my son has died, was I just talking the talk or am I going to walk the walk? She said, we have to forgive regardless of the temperature of our hearts. Love is first. Love is first. And I think what she did for that young man that day healed him more than anything. He had to go do some time, did some time in the workhouse for that. He was released. He's not reoffended. He has a wife, 3 kids, got his life back. He's doing really well. So Mary Jo became my mentor for getting into Mothers Against Drunk Driving. She became my role model for life. And another person who was Catholic as well came into the prison when I was at Oak Park Heights in Stillwater and visited me. And I didn't have family to come visit me. And I'll never forget that man. Always, always, always. And I think I would have went back to prison possibly if it wasn't for him. Maybe commit suicide, I don't know. I had no money. I was ready to give up when I got out. What am I going to do? Very difficult. And I don't think I would have reoffended. I think I would rather have killed myself than reoffend. But I'm still here. Mary Jo helped me. His name was Jim Benyon. He helped me. So many people have stepped forward to say that they love me in so many different ways. And if you love someone, you won't hurt them. And if you love yourself, you won't hurt yourself. But I didn't love myself. I hated myself for doing this. Being abused as a child, I hated myself. Why would someone abuse me? Why would I be treated that way? That just proves there's something wrong with me. And I was mistaken. It had nothing to do with me. And when I prayed to forgive the person that wanted to make amends for abusing me, I walked for years wanting to hurt him. And I was scared to death to meet with him because I didn't know if I was going to hurt him or if I was going to forgive him. And the day came where I had to step forward, and I asked Mary Jo, I said, I don't want to meet with this guy. And she says, you have to. When another human being wants to get well, we have to let him. We can't be an obstacle to another human being getting well. When they want to heal, we got to let them. And I said, I don't know if I can do it. I want to, don't know if I can do it. It was like getting involved with MAD. I said, I want to, I don't know if I can do it. I felt like God directed me into MAD, so I went into MAD. I prayed about when I was going to meet this guy. I agreed to do it. And when he walked into the facility, we decided to meet in a public place. Mary Jo was sitting on my left side at a bench in front of the restaurant. And every time someone would come into the foyer area, she'd go, is that him? Is that him? Is that him? Every time she said that, he's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, shut up. You know? And then the last time she said, is that him? As I'm rocking back and forth like someone at Israel at the Wailing Wall praying, oh God, help me here because I don't know how this is going to go. And she said, is that him? And something was different. And I started to look up, and I saw in my spirit mind all these beautiful colors coming down out of the sky. Every color imaginable in the form of fire, water droplets came down and went straight into my heart. And as soon as my eyes looked at him, that came into my heart, and my heart was filled with love for him, as where before it was hatred and anger. And it was replaced. And when I sat down with him after he said his amends, he said, well, do you hate me now? And I said, well, no, I love you. And when I said, I love you, he almost choked out the spirit that he had been carrying for so long, and he wasn't able to quite do it. But I did my part. I did my part. And, we got to be the best people we can be and leave the outcome up to God. And, I'm really grateful that St. Joseph's is willing to give people a second chance to look at our fellow human beings as someone who's made sometimes grave errors. But if we love, we will help each other because of that love. God is love. It's Scripture. And if we're doing anything that's not of love, we've departed from that pathway. It's what Christ taught. We forgive regardless of the temperature of our hearts. If you don't tell at least 3 people a day that you love them, you've probably wasted a day of your life. And there's 100 ways to make that a reality. Open a door for somebody who needs it. Smile. You might be the only person that smiles at someone someday. I saw a cop pull his car over and walk over to a homeless guy and give him his lunch one day. I thought, holy smokes, man, you're blocking traffic. No, I didn't think that part. And I was touched. I said, wow, this cop cares about people. I'll close with this story and then a poem. There was a little girl traveling through the great cathedrals of Europe. And while she was there, she was looking up into the stained glass windows. And she said, who are those people? And the tour guide said, well, those are the saints. And she came back to the States, and her friends asked her, well, what did you see in Europe? They were all excited. And in her innocence, she says, I've seen the saints. And they said, the saints? Who are the saints? And she said, the saints are the ones that let the light in. And that's what we do, is we bring our bodies to people in love. And God, the light, shines through our lives into them. We aren't the light. We're just the messengers. But we become a prism for the light. And the greater our love, the greater the light that can move through us. And God is the source of that. It's not all about just us. It's about surrender. Complete and total surrender. Complete and total love. When I was in prison the second time, I found a poem titled The More Loving One. At that time, it meant something degrading. It meant that man's inhumanity to man is a horrible thing. But then when I got out and I sobered up, The More Loving One, the name of the poem, meant something totally different. And I want to share this poem with you. W.H. Auden wrote it. I can email it to you if you want me to, send you a Word document of it. But he wrote, looking up at the stars I know quite well, that for all they care I can go to hell. But on earth, indifference is the least we have to dread from man or beast. How should we like it were stars to burn with a passion for us we couldn't return? If equal affection cannot be, let the more loving one be me. Admirer as I think I am of stars that do not give a damn, I cannot now I see them say, I missed one terribly all day. And were all the stars to disappear or die, I should learn to look at an empty sky and feel its total dark sublime, though this might take me a little time. For the first 8 years of speaking, I wanted to crash my car into a bridge and kill myself because I felt remorse and I couldn't hide in a bottle or a drug anymore. I had to feel it. And it was a very tough thing to do. Mary Jo said, look into the mirror every day and say, Timothy, I love you. And the first time I did it, I spewed expletives about how I really felt about me. 8 years later, I finally got to the point of forgiving myself and loving myself. 8 years, every morning in the mirror. And the day that I finally looked in the mirror and I said, where's that convict? Where's the guy? Where's the hater? Where's the offender? Where'd the guy go? I had this light. I just seemed no longer this heavy, angry man. And I was leaning forward and I was looking for him and I couldn't see him. And I ran down to the AA club to share with my friends. And I ran up and I'm sure I sounded like a piece of work. I run up all excited. There's 10, 12 people standing outside of the clubhouse getting ready to go in. They're all out smoking and stuff. And I said, check this out, man. You're going to love this stuff, man. I looked in the mirror this morning and I said, Timothy, I love you. Probably sounded like Joel Osteen or something. And a friend of mine, she takes a hit off of her cigarette and, what are you gonna kiss yourself to? She didn't know. I had paid some serious dues to get to that point. But it was Mary Jo that said, you need some mirror therapy. Look in the mirror every day and say, I love you. And now I can hold the words of other people who say, I love you, in my mind, they're the most healing words in the world. But we have to make them action. Our words have to match our action. It's not just praying only. Prayer is very powerful. It changes things. It healed me. But we do need to step forward into somebody's life, get out of our comfort zone, take a chance, take a risk, do it for God. But cross that invisible line in that imaginary courtroom we all have in our head, like Mary Jo, cross the courtroom, and approach someone and say, I love you. I love you. And I do love you. If you love someone, you'll serve them. So thanks for letting me serve you today. Peace.